Here's a question I've raised, I don't know how many gazillion times. Do we need another word for woke? So I was enthusiastic to read in my daily newspaper that the author and the journalist Lionel Shriver, who's an outspoken critic of woke ideology, thinks exactly this, saying an alternative is necessary as the word has become horribly overused. Lionel Shriver joins us now. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Nice to have you with us. I guess we've maybe all got our own different reasons as to why we either like the word or don't like the work. But the one thing I think we can all agree on is that the word woke is absolutely overused, sometimes misused maybe, does have different meanings to different people. But what's your main contention, Lionel, as to why we need to stick this word in the bin for good?
Well, I would like to get rid of it, but at the same time, I don't have a substitute. And until we do come up with a substitute, we're probably going to have to keep using it. I was doing an event yesterday at the Hay Festival in Wales, and the word inevitably arose, and my interlocutor suggested, I guess it's really become meaningless now, hasn't it? And I think that's the problem. It isn't meaningless. It does refer to something real, and in allowing it to get worn out, we open the door to having progressives tell us, oh, you're really talking about nothing. This doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's the same thing they've said about cancel culture. There's no such thing as cancel culture. There's just holding people to account. And of course, meanwhile, everyone's losing their jobs.
Yes, until you show people a list of all the people that have literally been cancelled.
Right. So, that's why we really need a substitute, because it's still real. It's still a big problem, and it still refers to a set of beliefs which are very rigid. They're kind of set menu politics, whereby, not only do you believe that the world is rigidly divided into the oppressed and the oppressor, but apparently you have to support Hamas in the Gaza Strip. You're a fanatic about climate change. You believe that there's such a thing as being born in the wrong body. We could put together a cogent list of specific issues and you have to be on this side of the issue, and that's what wokery is. It's what we used to call identity politics.
Yep.
We got tired of identity politics, and the trouble is that all the substitutes for this word that I've encountered just aren't going to catch on.
Yeah.
Like successor ideology. Is that snappy? Really?
You see, I quite liked identity politics because it did sort of what it said on the tin in many respects. And my problem with the word woke, which is, I agree with everything you've just said, Lionel, but I also sense that it's sort of been reversed engineered. And now, as I think you alluded to, that's sort of been used against the person that's advancing the argument.
Invented. Yeah, it was stolen from the left.
Correct.
It was lifted from the left and used against them as a weapon. And that's what made it so kind of wicked when it was first being used by the right against the and so it had a cleverness to it. And because it was unisyllabic, it also made it possible to make all kinds of creative variations on it, like wokerati. But all the variations, wokerati used to be funny. It isn't anymore.
That's true. I remember writing that in a monologue, wokerati, and I don't even know. I'm sure I had heard it elsewhere. I'd like to think I hadn't, and I just sort of thought about it, and I thought, man, that's a really good phrase, wokerati. What a beautiful extension of the word woke. What a useful and descriptive way to describe this curious collective of sort of almost imbecilic, deranged progressives, as I was calling them at the time. It just did everything I needed it to do, but now it's used so often that it doesn't really mean very much. And in fact, it's got worse. I saw somebody recently on social media say, somebody on the left was asking the question, what does woke mean? And then, of course, a load of people who were supporters of the person that posted it then wrote, it means not racist. And I wanted to chew off my own elbows at this idea that that's how it had been. We are woke, because we're not as if that is what somebody like yourself or somebody like myself or the gazillion other people ordinary thinking people, is if that is what we're using the word for. Of course, it's not that. More a hysterical reaction to normal stuff, as we once defined it, and beyond. But as you rightly say, what is the replacement? Because woke was a beautifully snappy, useful word.
Yes, and I think it's outlived its usefulness. I find that in public events and also in text, I try to use it as little as possible. Sometimes I say progressive politics. The progressive is imported from the United States. It's another term that has entered the UK lexicon directly from the US. It's at least a synonym, and it has a kind of neutrality to it, which makes it useful. There's something to be said for just going back to identity politics, because, as you note, that has content to it.
Sure.
And it correctly pinpoints what this movement is about. That is, and of course, it means subverting the word identity, which in my day, I used to have a day, meant who you thought you were as an individual, right? Your identity was you like the Talking Heads, right? And I like to write, and I used to play the cello. That was my identity, but that's not what it means now. No. Now it means it's the group or groups into which you were born unwillingly, and that's what you're stuck with till the end of time. So in my case, it means the only thing that matters about me as an individual is that I am white, American, and female. Yeah. That's it. And I find this very unsatisfying and actually obnoxious and anti-human.
I do wonder where that can, and then of course you get into the intersectionality argument. So you throw in whether it's a disability, whether it's religion, whether it's colour, etc. I mean the list goes on, and of course this curious world is designed to never end, and you are forever advance, or those that subscribe to all of this will forever be advancing their argument and offering up their complaints when their requests or their desires are not met. It's not meant to finish, right? It's meant to be a perpetual state of dissatisfaction.
Well, ideologies are never finished. They can be buried, they can be defeated, but as long as they're dominant, they gallop on. And of course, this one is built on grievance, right? And that means that the grievance can never be satisfied. Yeah. And so all that will happen if you give these people wins, which they've had lots of, is that they want more of them and they become more extreme. When ideologies are not being defeated, they are getting worse. They are getting more fanatical. And that's, of course, what's happened to this one. I mean, this latching on to Hamas is typical. Yeah. Of course, they've gone off the moral deep end, which in some ways is quite satisfying because it reveals that there's a moral hollow at the core of this ideology. And in backing the likes of Hamas, they expose themselves to being the kind of horrible people that they've been accusing everyone else of being. Yeah. So I see the seeds of its demise in that kind of ludicrous and extreme position. But I would also submit that there's something about our all getting sick of the word woke is a kind of, it's just a sign of the fact that what we're really sick of is wokery. And the reason we have to use the word all the time is that the ideology itself is constantly shoved up in our face and ruining our lives. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I was watching a lecture from Niall Ferguson, whose work I'm sure you're familiar with.
I love him.
Yeah, and he was talking about the whole DEI world at universities, particularly in the United States, and almost warning the Brits, be careful what you wish for. Because we can joke about the word woke, but the serious undertones, in fact, serious doesn't even get close to discussing what we're talking about here. He was essentially giving a warning that, this is affecting education, it's affecting free thought, it's affecting discourse and debate. This is real serious stuff.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things that's wrong with the term woke. I mean, after all, it rhymes with a joke, right?
Yep.
It has a lightness to it. It's a little ha ha, right? Well, actually, what's behind this stuff is not funny. And Ferguson is entirely right. It's completely corrupting education. It's costing companies a fortune,
Yep.
hiring all these people to do basically nothing. It's all a cosmetic exercise. And ultimately, of course, the DEI movement is anti-meritocratic.
Yeah.
So that it means that you're only hiring people to check some kind of box. Just, they're going to, your stats will improve, but that doesn't mean they know how to do the job or that they deserve it to be admitted to a selective university.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually the subject matter. I plug my own book. Very much the subject matter of my most recent novel, Mania, in which suddenly we decide that everyone is equally smart, and so you can't discriminate against people on the basis of intelligence. So, but
anyone could be an airline
one
pilot,
millimeter.
which is part of the thinking within your book, isn't it? We could all do anything
we're
we like.
1 millimeter away from there.
Yeah,
because ultimately, when you are doing hiring and admissions to universities and putting people in positions of power only because they have a certain race or sex or sexual preference, you have thrown competence and excellence out the window. And that is a formula for a completely dysfunctional society. I mean, nothing makes me more nervous as a frequent traveler than the fact that the air traffic controllers are now getting involved in DEI.
If there isn't a demonstrable and beautiful example of the madness and the dangers of this, then I don't know what is. That is fabulous. Listen, Lionel Shriver, thank you. Let's talk again. This is great stuff. She is, of course, an outspoken critic of woke ideology. But is there an alternative for the word that can do it greater justice? Because it needs something almost bigger and more serious. Suggestions at this end, we're welcome to those.